What if I told you that the term Christian nationalism was never meant to describe Christians, but it was created to destroy us? It's not a definition, it's a weapon. And once you see where I'm coming from, you'll never fall for it again. Today, I'm exposing how the left invented and redefined this label on purpose, connecting things like racism, fascism, and even violence so that anyone who wants biblical values in government gets smeared with this term. And the playbook, it goes all the way back. So stick with me, because once you see the tactic, you'll never hear that phrase the same way again. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Kwuam Adams with Brooklyn Bridge Media, and That's Fire Podcast, where we talk about everything from politics to pop culture and everything in between and what the Bible has to say about it. You know, basically helping us to see how we should think about these things as Christians and move in this crazy world we live in. Everyone has heard this term, Christian nationalism. It is a term that's come up in the last 4 or 5 years that is used and thrown around in every corner, but no one can seem to give you an exact definition of what it means. But whenever you hear it, it's always said to you in a term in a way that's pejorative as a Christian. And I'm going to show you why we should not accept this term, should not accept this moniker, and we should reject it every time, because it's a specific tactic that the left uses to get you and I to be quiet. Every political movement knows this, that whoever defines the terms wins the debate. You don't have to prove your opponent wrong if you can just make their ideas sound wrong just by changing the words. Like, you don't gotta win a debate or win an argument. If you could just change the definition and make them defend that definition that isn't even real, then you've already won the argument. And we see they do that all the time. What are some examples of that? You know, because I'm trying to prove to you, I'm going to prove to you that Christian nationalism is just another made up term by the left to scare you into being quiet. So, let's take abortion for example. Conservative groups that opposed abortion originally called themselves pro-life. They focused on protecting life rather than, specifically opposing abortion like that. But early media and leftists and outside groups, they wanted to frame it in a negative way, and liberal commentators mainly began labeling them as anti-abortion. So you hear the right and Christians, we always say pro-life, and that's how it started, but then you hear the left try to redefine it and reshape it into anti-abortion, making it a negative thing and framing it in a negative way, simply opposing something. Conservatives didn't invent the negative label. We didn't invent that. We didn't come up with anti-abortion. It was applied to us. It was applied to us Christians. They chose the narrative for themselves, but others try to redefine it to fit their agenda. That's how they redefine things. They do it all the time. All of a sudden the word woman, they can't define the word woman. And woman is anybody who identifies as a woman. And that's how ridiculous it is. And then when you point it out, they try to act like you just saying the craziest things. It's a perfect example how language is changed and weaponized in politics. If you can frame your opponent's beliefs in negative terms, you don't have to disprove them. I'm going to say that again. If you can frame your opponent's beliefs in negative terms and people accept it, then you don't have to disprove them, and you don't have to prove your point either. For example, when the left uses the word tolerance, they don't actually mean the classical definition of tolerance that we expect them to mean, respecting other people's views and even while disagreeing. They redefine it to mean affirmation. They want you to say that they want you to affirm them, and they use the word tolerance. And they do this all the time. Now, we don't do this very much. I don't know of any examples that we Christians and believers do this, but they do it all the time. And it's a sneaky maneuver that they do that we allow them to do all the time. And then we end up chasing all these rabbits and these wrong words and try to defend things that they set up for us. It's a lose situation. Christian nationalism is just another term, like I said, where they created it. Now, it started to gain prominence, in academia and, places of learning, higher learning, and on, left media, liberal media back in 2020, 2021, around that time is when it started to get popular. where they started to use that a lot. And the loose definition of Christian nationalism is when you people on the right, conservatives, want to infuse their Christian beliefs into government, right? Meaning we want our Christian beliefs to influence government. We want they say that we want to be labeled as a Christian nation. And then what they do is they also connect or try to connect those ideas to racism, sexism, classism, and all that. The word nationalism harkens back to fascist regimes. And so they want to try to psychologically connect the two to cause fear. But this is not anything new. Y'all need to understand this is not anything. This is not a tactic that is new. In fact, back in the 60s, there was a guy who wrote a book called Rules for Radicals that a lot of your leftist leaders, people that are the archetypes of modern leftist liberalism, like President Obama or Hillary Clinton or the like, they read this guy's book and accredited him with a lot of things. Saul Alinsky wrote this book called Rules for Radicals. If you want to read it, go read it, and it'll give you a great insight into the mind of how liberals strategize, and you see it when you read it. You're like, oh, holy crap, that's exactly what happens. His entire strategy was about the use of perception, ridicule, redefinition to destabilize his opponents. Here's a couple of his famous quotes. He said, pick a target, freeze it, personalize it, polarize it. That's exactly what what they do to Christians today. Instead of debating biblical truth, instead of debating what is true, is this right or wrong, they freeze us as Christian nationalists. They try to use that term. They say that we are anti-abortionists. They say that we are bigots. And they try to freeze you in that definition and then polarize society against us. So that everybody that's not really savvy will assume that that term Christian nationalism is an actual thing. They accept their definition and place it on Christians, on conservatives, and then they can relegate us to the dustbin of history so they don't have to listen to us. It's exactly what's happening today. They also said to ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Ridicule is and don't they do that very well? Don't they ridicule very well when you get in a debate with them and you start to use logic and all that? Then the first thing they do is they start to call you names. They call you a bigot. They call you this, that, all these names or whatever. I've had it happen to me 1,000 million times. As soon as you start to make some headway and they can't answer your questions, they ridicule you, and then that gets like an emotional rise out of people. And then when that happens, when you can easily manipulate people with that, they just quickly ignore anything you were saying, and all of a sudden, the popular opinion goes towards those that can ridicule you the best. The term Christian nationalist isn't meant to explain what's going on when they use it. It's only meant to mock and isolate, so you're embarrassed to even stand up for your faith in public life. That's exactly what it is for. It is meant to mock you. It is meant to connect you to something that is wrong and evil, which is crazy because it's supposed to connect you to Marxism, and Marxist thought and ideology is what brought up the quote of nationalism in the first place, but which they love, but they want to connect you to it because they know it's wrong, evil, or people don't really like it, and psychologically people accept that as a threat. And what we do is we sit there, no, I'm not a Christian nationalist, or yes, I am, like some people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, well, and they try to take it as a badge of honor, which doesn't work. That's why the term is intentionally undefined. If you look up what is Christian nationalism, you'll get, a nebulous definition from several different scholars, but not one central thing, because they want to use it to keep power and use it as a stigma and not with any substance. Another thing that they do that you see all over is they say, this is an existential threat to democracy. That anything that Donald Trump, anything that us conservatives, anything that us Christians want to stand up for is an existential threat to democracy.
We are facing an existential threat to democracy. actions represented a unique and existential threat to our democracy.
And the thing that they try to tell you that, there's division on both sides when it really is not. Don't believe the hype. But a lot of that division and anger and vitriol is coming from one side, and the other side counterpunches. So, whenever they say that they're an existential threat to democracy, you need to understand that they are not using those words in the same way that you think they are. They're using that as a way to redefine what democracy is, so that they try to equal democracy with progressivism, and that is not true. That's not the case. So the left will even try to tell you that this is a scholarly thing, this is something that has been proven, when it hasn't. You have essays and studies and surveys that were done to try to define what Christian nationalism is, when in actuality, all it is opinions. There's a study done by a survey study done by sociologists Andrew Whitehead and Samuel Perry that defined Christian nationalism as a cultural framework that idealizes and advocates a fusion of Christianity with American civic life. And then they try to make that as something that's bad. So here's what I want to say to y'all. Even if that is true, which a lot of it is true, we want to have our ideologies and our thoughts and our opinions and what we believe to know is truth that helps a nation grow and a nation be successful for all its people. We believe that it's rooted in biblical truth. And of course, we're going to try to have those truths be wrought out in our government, just like anybody else. Like, you need to understand that everybody else is fighting for real estate in the political realm, and all they're fighting for is a manifestation of their moral framework. Where do you think the whys of laws come from? Why do we do this? Why is this law right? Why should we care for the poor? Why should we? Because it comes from a moral framework. And churches and pastors, what we tend to do is we think that the word politics is a curse word. It's not a curse word. Politics is not a dirty word. I want you to hear this. Politics, all it is the game that we play between sides to see whose morality is going to win the day. That's all politics is. And if you exit yourself from the game because you only want to preach Jesus, or because you don't want to be labeled as a Christian nationalist, then you leave the door open for the other side to have their complete total way. And if you believe that allowing men in women's bathrooms, allowing children to be able to have puberty blockers when they can't even decide what time to go to bed, if you think that abortion is okay and killing the unborn is okay, if you think that having as large amount of government as possible to be involved in every aspect of your life is okay, if you believe that we should eat the rich, we should kill the rich and redistribute wealth, if you believe that all those things are wrong, then if you don't stand up and fight against it and say something against it from the pulpit or from, your conversations or in the ballot box as a Christian, then what's going to happen is they're going to come over and all that's going to happen. And you or I don't have a right to complain about what happens if we're not vocal about our belief system that comes from the Bible that stands against that evil. Listen, the things that make America good and great, although we have a lot of problems and issues, all come from biblical values, stem from biblical values. They'll try to tell you that they came from the Enlightenment. It did not. It came from biblical values. Biblical values tell us that we are all made in God's image. Therefore, we have some inalienable rights that cannot be taken away from us because they're not given to us by man or governments. Government is only there to secure those rights and protect those rights. There's no other governmental system in history that promoted that. But they will try to tell you that thinking that way is Christian nationalism, and we shouldn't do that, and it's an existential threat to democracy. So they have created that to scare you. Listen, it is a fact that all political action is an effort to influence laws, policies, and values of society. Politicians, lobbyists, activists, citizens, and of every ideology and religion and thought process are attempting to align government with their worldview. That's what it is in every society, everywhere. Progressives and liberals are about environmental protection, social justice policies, etc., etc. They try to make sure you have that. We're going to, have our laws to be. The libertarians want to maximize individual freedom and minimal government interference, right? They don't want the government to interfere in anything. Conservatives want to have traditional family values, fiscal restraint, etc., etc. We don't want abortion. We want to have freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. And then you got your socialists and Marxists who want to have a state-managed economy. They want still social equity, or so they say, and initiatives. They want to take the centralized government. They want to take away the money and the power and the rights, the means of production from companies, and they say they want to give it to the people, which it does not actually ever work out that way. Therefore, wanting one's beliefs reflected in government is not inherently wrong. It's not controversial. It's very definition of civic engagement. But yet they want you to believe that by promoting your biblical beliefs in the public square is somehow Christian nationalist and is wrong and an existential threat to society. They can do it, but you can't. You see how that works? Christian political engagement is no different. There is no inherently radical or dangerous about us being involved, unless it violates the constitutional rights of others, which it does not. And even then, that's true for all ideologies. There's nothing wrong with it. They just don't want you to do it. It's a double standard. Terms like Christian nationalism often attach a negative stigma to Christian participation in politics, implying, one, that Christians are uniquely trying to dominate society. Their values are inherently oppressive and intolerant, right? When we know that the word intolerant, what they mean by it. It's a double standard. I hope you're seeing that. The word Christian nationalism and its term and the way they use it is an outgrowth or a manifestation of their double standard meant to shut you up. Are you going to allow them to do that? So whenever you hear the word Christian nationalism, you should now realize that it is not anything that you should adhere to or back down from or be afraid of. The first thing you say when they say, oh, Christian nationalism, you should say that's a fake term that y'all use, that y'all made up, that we don't receive. If someone calls you a name, you don't have to go by it. Someone said it's not what you're called, it's what you answer to. So if anybody ever calls me or says, oh, Christian nationalism, I'm going to call it out right then and there. I'm going to say, no. What you're trying to say is that you don't want Christians to influence the nation. You don't want Christianity and biblical principles that we hold to influence laws and influence society and how things go. But yet you're okay with you influencing it. You're okay with you and your ideologies and your standards influencing things. Why is it okay for you, but it's not okay for me? No, I'm not a Christian nationalist. And by the way, I would suggest if you are someone who thinks that Christians should not be patriotic, now obviously the cross is and the kingdom is the number one thing that we adhere to. We are kingdom citizens above everything else. And we happen to just be emissaries of that kingdom in this nation and other nations. But Jeremiah 29, if you read Jeremiah 29, it tells you that you should whatever nation you find yourself in captivity or where you're at, that you should pray for its prosperity. You should want it to prosper. You should build houses and have children and marry and pray for its prosperity, because as that nation prospers, you prosper. That sounds like patriotism to me. So don't let the left cause you to take on this name of Christian nationalism. Let's knock it down every time it comes up. I don't want to accept it. You shouldn't either. Hopefully that helped you in some kind of way. We got tons of videos that we are putting out there for you. Let's join the conversation. Leave a like, leave a comment, share, subscribe to the channel. Let's get this channel up and flowing. Share this video to everybody you know. And remember that we are not of those who shrink back. I will see you on the